What's up and welcome back to Nowstalgia Pod, giving you your weekly look at what's going on in pop culture. My name is Pat Sheehan, joined by my co-host, Dave 40 in quarantine, Dave Martin Swagger. Dave, what's going on, man?
Hey, man, we here, we living, we thriving. Dr. J's The Chronic, now on Tidal and Spotify. Suck it, Apple. We out here. How's it going?
What is your preferred streaming service?
I pay for Spotify.
Pay for Spotify.
Support
I think
Swedes.
Spotify is by far the superior streaming service. I saw our guy Antoine Fantano did a hot take video where he was saying it's superior. I don't really think that's much of a hot take, though.
It's like I feel like it has the best personalization algorithms and just generally best public playlist stuff like that. The year end stats you get, I haven't seen any really comparison from the other options. So yeah, I think Spotify is pretty desirable.
Yeah, and I just feel like it's so user friendly. Like it's pretty easy to use. I think the only part that I wish was different was just the editing playlist on your phone. I wish that was a little bit more streamlined, especially because I'm constantly editing our Nostalgia Best of 2020 playlist, which everybody listening should subscribe to, as well as subscribe to our YouTube page. But otherwise, I feel like it's a pretty user-friendly app. So Spotify, the superior app, in my opinion. Dave, what do we got today? We got a couple albums, lots of TV to talk about.
Yeah,
maybe we'll preview a couple of. Is that new Hemsworth movie coming out next week? Probably, right?
Bad Education's coming out next week or Saturday on HBO. That's the Corey Finley movie, the Thoroughbreds follow-up with Hugh Jackman and Allison Janney, I believe. So I've been hyped for that movie. So that's coming at a great time, honestly.
Yeah, it's coming at a great time because we are starting to run low on things to talk about. So
it's true.
Anyways, why don't we, including DaBaby? It's so cute. No, this DaBaby album, the third one in what, a year at this point?
Yeah, fourth full length in like less than a year and a half because he had that Blank Blank project come out in November 2018. So yeah, a lot of output in a short amount of time from DaBaby, who has not been in the, I think, mainstream consciousness for much more than just that time period. So it's definitely a flood the zone strategy. And of course, this is coming off of his pretty prolific feature run in 2019 as well. So he's not slowing down, that's certainly for sure.
Yeah, he's putting in that work. And, you know, he's really blown up, I think, over the past year. I think when we reviewed Kirk, we talked about how it seemed like him and Megan Thee Stallion were the two biggest risers from the past year. You know, especially like the Suge music video gained a lot of attention, a lot of acclaim. So DaBaby's profile obviously rising. We were pretty, I think, I'd say lukewarm on Kirk. I think that we liked it, but we were like, yeah, we think DaBaby can go up a level or maybe should find some new creative avenues. Is Blame It on Baby, his newest album, a sign of growth for Baby?
Plainly, no. But he does attempt to do things a little differently in spurts. The problem is he's not a good singer. So it didn't work. No, I think this is my least favorite of the four now full lengths we've gotten in the past year and a half. Blame It on Baby. There's some moments for sure. You still get the, appealing punchline rap, the heavy bass drums that we associate with his sound. But, on Kirk, the first song intro is DaBaby being really introspective and telling you a personal story, something he doesn't do all that often. There's no sign of that this time around. And when he's doing this, the same old DaBaby flow, I don't think anything really hits that great. Nothing really rises up. I'd say, again, like his features last year, the way he can play with guests on this, I think, were my favorite moments. But overall, I found this pretty disappointing, and unfortunately, it was just kind of reminding me of how Migos recently just kind of was giving us diminishing returns after such a triumphant, rise. So, yeah, I thought
Yeah.
this was pretty mediocre.
Yeah, I wasn't really impressed with this too much. After listening to Baby on Baby and Kirk, I was expecting a little bit more from this, and I think that was a bit naive of me because I think really what we're seeing is the baby riding a wave right now, and the wave is just very samey, and that's kind of how I felt listening to this album a lot. Other than when the features kind of jumped in and Baby would play off them and inject a little bit of life in, I kind of found myself feeling like a lot of these songs sounded very similar, and even Baby's flow, especially in like the first half of the album. He starts to switch it up, but I feel like it's very much the same type of cadence throughout. And I'm just like,
Mm-hmm.
needs a little, I don't know, a little spicing up of this. It's just
Right.
something different, you know?
Like a song like Find My Way, he's using a different vocal inflection, but it's still the same flow. So who cares,
Yeah.
And like he has like, I think, solid technical ability, and he's pretty good on the mic. You'd think he'd be able to diversify this. So it doesn't seem like he's just tried that hard at this point, And yeah, the attempts to try and get a little more melodic, I think, just completely fall flat. I think there's one moment where he sounds okay, but that's certainly, I think, not the direction to go. And I think to make matters worse, even I think Roddy Ricch wasn't even that good on his feature on this. But I think the two songs that jumped out to me were Jump with NBA Youngboy. I actually liked how they traded verses, but that chemistry was good. I like that one. And then I think the obvious highlight is Nasty with Ashanti and Megan Thee Stallion. Those two had previously linked on Cash Shit last year off Megan's debut tape, or second tape. And Ashanti, nice to hear from her. That's not something we say all that often. So other than that, I really was pretty bored with it.
I didn't mind Drop with A Boogie, A Boogie, who
Sure.
Has he dropped an album that we've talked about in a long
We
time?
did not talk about the last one.
Okay,
that's actually the last two.
Mm.
I didn't like the most recent one, but Hoodie Season from early 2019. I like that one. That was good.
We skipped over that one, but I feel like every time he jumps on, I'm like, yeah, that's it's something decent, something interesting. But that's kind of the sad thing is that's where I'm at with this album. Even the decent showings, I'm like, okay, yeah, that's pretty good. That one stood out. But yeah, I agree. I think Nasty is by far the standout for this. I also thought I'd liked the album cover, having the mask on, very much of the moment. Good. So DaBaby, I think he's one of these stars that really rides on the current cultural wave that he's on, and maybe after this he'll slow down a little bit and focus on a different project, but ride that wave, man. Cash those checks. We'll see. Mm-hmm. Yeah. A group, a duo that is not really riding that wave so much, but taking some time to make some really artistic shit. Division, dropping their first album in 3 years, follow up to 2017's Morning After. Before that, they had dropped their first album September 5th in 2016. So a little while since we heard from these guys. How did you feel about a Muse in Her Feelings, Dave? Division's 2020 album.
Yeah, I actually liked this a lot. I thought Division's third record was smooth as shit.
Yeah.
And, just kind of got me thinking that signing to Drake has not really worked out for anyone. Division have been lauded pretty much this whole time, 3 albums in, but they're not popular at all, despite being signed to OVO Sound. And, 1985, part of this duo, the producer, he's made a name for himself through working with Drake. He has 3 Grammy noms and 1 win. He co-produced Hotline Bling and One Dance and Just Hold On, We're Going Home. He was nominated for Producer of the Year because of Views. Like, these guys, when Drake signs people, they do a lot of good stuff for Drake. But like, what does Drake bring it to the table for the other guys? Clearly, these guys have a really nice, I think, feel for modern R&B.
Yeah,
and they should have a much bigger profile.
Definitely. I mean, this album, I agree with the assessment. It's very smooth, and it really is like classical R&B kind of mashed together with some like neo funk and soul sound throughout, and
Mm.
some production blemishes or production flourishes, I should say, from 1985. Like you mentioned, I think the production on this is the thing that stands out by far the most, along with some really, I think, excellent features throughout and choice features. You know,
Yeah.
it's what the biggest profile name on here. I mean, I guess you could maybe argue Summer Walker, but would be Future or
Yep.
Party Next Door. But
Dollar Sign as well.
yeah, so there's a. Oh, I didn't actually even see Dollar Sign. Is
Yeah,
she?
he's weird. He's like listed as like a co-headliner on the song and not in like the feature. I hate the way
Oh
people are
yeah,
stupid with their
Dangerous City.
track listings. Yeah. So
Gotcha.
and Pop Can's
So
on here. Yeah. I think you're right. They are choice. Like Summer Walker's coming off a really big 2019 in the R&B space. So that was a smart one to get. And this is, I think, Future at his best. This is, I think, when this kind of stuff Future fans really like when he's making this kind of stuff. So yeah, the guests were great.
yeah, the guests and the guests felt like they really fit in. It never felt like, you know, we talked last week about I forgot who it was, but I said like, you know, it sounds like that's a guest song, and they're just kind of hosting them on it, but it never felt that way within this. It felt like this was very much still of the album, and the album felt like a whole, like a project as a whole, not just like a compilation of songs. Especially in the middle, where you go from uh, Dangerous City to So What to Outlandish to Keep It Going. It's just transition, 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 and it goes together so well, while also varying the tempo of the album, but kind of still keeping the cohesiveness. Really impressive. Um, I loved just the overall vibe of listening to this, and a song like Outlandish going into Keep It Going was such an interesting transition to me, because Outlandish was almost like hypnotic in a sense. Like I found myself just kind of like feeling like I was like melting into the song, and then Keep It Going kind of comes in, and it's such like more of a clubby, like dancey song. It's
Right.
like great transition. I really was impressed with that. Any moments or anything from the album that really stood out to you? Songs, perhaps?
Yeah, I think just listening, Daniel Daly, he's the performer
Mm-hmm.
part of the duo. Kind of reminds me a lot of like think Trey Songz as a performer, but this is like
Mm,
more when Trigga's doing like this more traditional R&B, less pop stuff, the more sultry, sensual, sometimes sad boy shit. I think
mm-hmm.
that's what it's going for, but it's going good. And Daniel, he has a really really strong falsetto, and he's able to harmonize with a lot of these guests pretty well. Like hearing him with someone like
Yeah.
Summer Walker or Dollar Sign, when you have people that are just talented vocalists and they can actually match up well together, I think it really really can stand out. I think the weird highlight for me, completely unexpected on A Muse towards the end, that flips Dead Presidents by Jay-Z of all
Yeah.
beats. What a pull. Awesome.
Yeah. No, I know. I noticed that, and I actually like had to go check the notes, because I was like, is that
Right.
real? Am I like
Mm-hmm.
imagining that? Yeah. I think you made a great point about the harmonizing. I think I can't remember, and I wish I'd written it down, because I was I actually listened to this while driving, which I think added to it, because this feels like a really great driving album to me. Um, I think there's moments with both Snow Allegra on Between Us, and then again with Chantel May, where they hit these like notes together at the same time that just, it's almost like perfection in harmonizing, and I was just really blown away. I had heard of Division. I did not know that they were called Division, though. I thought it was DVSN, so that was news to me. But I had never really gotten into them like this. I knew a couple, like one or two songs off them, and I'm hoping it gains some traction, because I think they definitely deserve a little bit more uh, notice than they're getting. What would you say is your favorite song from this?
I think Dangerous City, probably.
Mm,
But
yeah.
I guess sometimes some songs maybe just fade into the back. But I think a lot of them can, really just sound really good. So especially the ones with the guests. But I think Dangerous City was my favorite.
Yeah, I agree that was one of my favorites too. I already mentioned Outland, so we'll add Dangerous City to our Nostalgia Best of 2020. And now let's move on to Fiona Apple. So Fiona Apple dropping this fifth album, Fetch the Bolt Cutters. Dave, what was your relationship to Fiona going into this? It's interesting to see the different ways people talk about her on the internet.
Yeah, I mean that's kind of where I wanted to start too. I think Fiona Apple is someone who, if you weren't exposed to her, you probably weren't going to like know who she was, partially because of her lack of output. This is only her third album in the last 20 years, and she blew up when I was, 3.5 years old. So it's not, she's not exactly someone who's like been in like the mainstream consciousness, mainly because that's how she wanted to be. So like I just kind of knew of like the plaudits, but never really had dived too far in. But I just ran back the first two records, the 90s ones, leading up to this, which both are great. And yeah, she's just kind of a badass, man.
Yeah.
And that is certainly true off this new one, man. With all the incredible critical acclaim, I think right now it's still the highest rated album on Metacritic of all time at the moment. As more reviews flow in, that's subject to change, of course, but right now it's the highest rated. Pretty crazy.
Yeah, Fiona Apple, in my mind, almost is like this mythic type of figure because her output is always getting acclaim. It's always top notch, but she doesn't have that much output, like you mentioned. So even before this, she hadn't released an album in 8 years. The idler wheel is wiser than the driver of the screw and whipping chords. Well, it's this very long album title, but I think when I think about Fiona Apple, kind of like what I picture of her is really just this like badass songwriter who has such a distinct and cutting and introspective voice that really speaks to, I think, not only like femininity, but just like relationships in general, in a way that no one else really ever talks about the subjects she does. And even on this album, Fetch the Bolt Cutters, by far the things that stands out, apart from her ability to like craft songs in a way that are very specific to her, it's just the way that she writes lyrics and kind of ties things together, and even like some of the word choices she has are just so unique to her, and really just fantastically constructed. She's obviously a master of songwriting, and that's, I think, by far her strongest strength, and it comes across throughout this whole album. What was your experience listening to the album? Were you as blown away as people were online?
Yeah, man, I thought it was really great just because it's clearly such a realized vision. And when that's coming from someone as talented and in full command of songwriting, as you said, it stands out. But even just like the kind of vocals choices she'll make, maybe to like have her songs play out, there's just so many like almost out there moments, but they just totally land because everything just feels like it's part of this like greater symphony. So like, yeah, I think really from the jump, you kind of get that. I think Shamika lyrically starts to really kick it off a lot. I mean, about Fiona's relationship with women in general. I think later on, obviously, a song like "Ladies" is much more satirical almost, but like the whole thing about like being still cool with your ex's new girlfriend. It doesn't need to be any animosity. It's a really kind of great observation, and she goes about it in a really funny way. But then there's also some like much darker shit, like definitely like Me Too with Jace. She literally mentions being raped at one point on this, and I forget what song that was.
In the same bed you gave birth in,
right? Newspaper, So there's a lot here. I think it's something that really requires lots of listens because a lot of the songs have a lot going on. So you really just need to focus on each one of them. But yeah, I thought it was awesome.
It's interesting because this album just kind of popped up, right? And it seems like she's just kind of been recording this on her own in her home in Venice, and um, uh, it's obvious that she has a lot to say, and I think it's pretty fascinating that she decided to drop it at this time with everything kind of going on, and that she really just like made some very choice decisions in terms of what she want to talk about. Like a song that resonated probably most with me was the title track, "Fetch the Bolt Cutters." Not only do I think that's a really interestingly but expertly constructed song, there's also this aspect to it where she's talking about like wanting to be like she wants to escape from the situation that she feels very trapped in and has felt trapped in for a long time, and to have like the dog barking in the background like around the chorus just feels like a nice metaphor that she just kind of throws in there along with it. And also to have it drop during this fucking quarantine where I think a lot of us feel very trapped and feel very stuck in a situation we don't really have control over. It just feels like it's such a song of the moment, while also I don't know if she actually wrote it for this moment. It works on so many different levels. Really impressive. What other
Yeah,
songs like stood out to you? I think. Go ahead.
no, I was just kind of echoing what you were saying. Like none of the messages feel overly preachy or over the top. It's just kind of like fits the whole vibe of the album, and like you can like draw some like obvious parallels to things from what she's saying, but nothing is like super in your face, which I liked as well. As far as songs, though, I think we might have mentioned a lot. I also really liked Relay. Thought that one sounded really good. But yeah, in general, like the instrumentation throughout, it's really good.
Yeah. That. Yeah, the chorus, the way it just it actually feels like it's like going around in a circle on Relay, I think really adds to the track. Yeah, the thing is that there's no skips on this album, and the album flows together really well, similar to Division. But yeah, Fiona, just again, I think this just adds to that mythicism in my mind, because it's like you come around 8 years later, just drop a fire album, and then who knows the next time we'll hear from her.
Right.
I do have to say, her like public persona really jives like with me. Like she just feels like so like perfectly like not a celebrity. Like she posted a video on Twitter where she was like, I got asked to have my song used in something I didn't want it used in, so I said no. And then I was like, wait, what the fuck am I doing? Like, and I emailed them back and said yes, because even though I don't really want my song associated with that, like no one's gonna care, and I just want the money so I can give it away to charity. And I was like, and she was like, if you're an artist and people want to give you money for your songs right now, take it and give it away. And I was just like, such like a real thing that like you don't really hear celebrities just like talking about in that way. Like they are usually very protective, and she's like, who cares? Like there's so many bigger things going on. It's really fit with her. So
yeah, I think
cool.
She recently donated like a year's worth of royalties from Criminal being used, her biggest song being used in TV and movies and stuff. So yeah, I think that's actually a really smart way to approach it, because you can definitely understand her like kind of like rock star attitude about not wanting to go that way. So I think it just kind of speaks to the overall like maturity and low-key high-mindedness of a lot of the lyrics on this album. It just everything really connects and makes sense, and it's kind of cool. And like you said, her persona is I think just as appealing as the music at times.
Definitely. Fetch the Bolt Cutters, approved by Nowstalgia Pod and pretty much everybody else on the internet. So go give it a listen if you haven't. Let's jump to something else that seems to have a really high approval rating. The Last Dance, or I think it's just The Last Dance, on ESPN created a docuseries about Michael Jordan's final season with the Bulls, created by Jason Hare, who also did Andre the Giant for HBO, which we also reviewed. So check that out on our YouTube page. Dave, this is the first two episodes premiered last night. How are you feeling about The Last Dance after two episodes? You like it?
Yeah, I do like it. It's it's going to be 5 weeks, 10 parts. That's certainly it's a lot of content. Some OJ Made in America shit right here. But it's definitely a worthwhile endeavor because we're finally seeing the tape, the behind the scenes footage that was recorded for that 97-98 season that has just been sitting there unused because part of the agreement was that Jordan had to sign off on the use of this footage before it was used for anything. So just the fact that we're finally getting to see all this stuff, I think it is really cool. And obviously, I wasn't, cognitively aware of any of this happening at the time when it was happening in my young life. So, it's certainly, I think, very informative a lot for a lot of people. So it's I think there's a lot to obviously be invested in with it.
Yeah, it comes at such a perfect time. So it was moved up a couple of weeks in terms of its drop because of just I think the need for content for ESPN,
especially at ESPN.
Right. Yeah. And this is also if you want to get a lot of eyes on something, dropping a Michael Jordan documentary when there's nothing else new to watch, gonna get some eyeballs. And there had been apparently, I mean, I wasn't privy to these conversations, but there had been rumors in NBA circles that there was all this amazing footage from this season because I think it was Adam Silver actually, who wasn't the commissioner at the time but was in league office, said this is obviously coming apart, we should go get some footage of what's going on. I saw on Twitter this morning a clip from, I think it's either one of the next week's episodes, about Dennis Rodman pulling Jordan in to Phil Jackson's office to say he needed a vacation to Vegas during the NBA playoffs. And it was funny because it shows Jordan telling the story, and then it shows Rodman and Pippen and Phil Jackson all watching him tell the story on a phone. And right. that just feels like such smart, such an easy way to get viral moments going from something like this. Like seeing all these guys, Jordan's story on camera, and then being able to tweet about that and put it out there. And I think that's the thing that resonates most with this is, obviously Michael Jordan is this mythic all-time figure, probably the most popular athlete of all time, now followed by LeBron James, and Tiger Woods at one point maybe could have been in that conversation. And
Muhammad Ali too.
Yeah, Muhammad Ali, good point. But you already have this mythic figure everybody wants to tune into, and then you have all these other parts that you're focusing on. You have Dennis Rodman and his zaniness. You have Phil Jackson's last season and kind of being pushed out, and his Zen masterness. I thought actually the second episode about Scottie Pippen was really fascinating because I feel like I don't really know a ton about his story. I always kind of been Michael's shadow. So hearing how he took this really shitty contract, and then that kind of pushed the drama forward with this final season because he was so pissed about everything, wanting a new contract. And the GM of the Bulls, what was his name?
Jerry Krause.
Yeah, villainized in these first two episodes.
Oh, yeah. Definitely not the player and power and era we know today. It's kind of wild. It just as a document to look back on the amount of control the management still had over the players. Nowadays, star players usually going to get what they want. So it's kind of cool to see that, And obviously, I think maybe the overall big appeal beyond the mystery of what it actually is in this footage is that Jordan is pretty known for being a really competitive guy who's often a big dick, asshole, right? And probably had his own demons with gambling and stuff. We're going to see a lot of that now.
Yeah.
And Jordan's going to talk about it and address that because he's on board with this doc. So even if it doesn't go all the way, that's still obviously really appealing stuff. And I think also stuff that, a lot of people, again, probably don't know a ton about. They just kind of know just top level stuff. So I'm looking forward to seeing him just even now, Jordan just talk when he looks at the tape and stuff and talk shit about Isaiah Thomas because he just can't stand him still. That kind of stuff's great. As a Knicks fan, I'm not happy to see Phil Jackson talk, but it is what it is.
Yeah, I am looking forward to watching the rest of this, obviously, but I'm also expecting to leave this just being wow, Michael Jordan, really not that great of a person. Jerry Krause, really not that great of a person. Although I do think the Jordan access in this and him actually telling some of these stories forthcoming is probably the part I'm most fascinated by. MJ, like, give me all your inside stories. I loved hearing the Ainge one where him and Ainge played golf
Mhm.
together, and then he dropped 60 points, 61 points the next day
Yep.
against the Celtics in playoffs. Crazy. Definitely looking forward to it. I'm sure we'll check in at the end. Any last thoughts on The Last Dance, though?
um, nah, man. But LeBron's still better.
Well, someone that I'm not sure is better, but definitely still a queen in their own right is Kate Blanchett, and she is the star of Mrs. America, uh, Davi Waller's newest uh, miniseries for FX on Hulu about Phyllis Schlafly. It's a mouthful, and basically how her story and the story of the women's rights movement in the 1960s and into the 70s kind of came about at the same time, and how she's on the opposing side of all this. Very the first 3 episodes dropped on Hulu, and man, I like devoured these episodes. I was really enjoying the storytelling, and just really intrigued by the time period, and this is a time period that is talked about ad nauseum, Nixon right after 1969 and everything with that, and just like the Vietnam. There's just so much going on that's very fascinating. But this is a story that I feel like I haven't really seen depicted in TV and movies, and I think that's probably played a part into why I was so in on this. Did you have the same experience I did watching?
Yeah, man, absolutely. The talent of the production stands out, but even just I think where they're trying to take this with, like you said, like second wave feminism in the '70s, and just kind of centered around the Equal Rights Amendment, and which has been in the news a little more recently too. So you mean no real spoilers for this kind of stuff, but seeing, a lot of times when we talk about that stuff, it's really directly about the counterculture stuff, right? Vietnam and '69 and all that, right? But this is focusing on our lead character is against that and ultimately is going to succeed in a certain sense. And it's kind of about the bad guys, like Barry Goldwater is in the first one. And Barry Goldwater, despite being greened by LBJ in the presidential election, basically formed the conservative playbook that we see today. So, and seeing Phyllis Schlafly's, role in helping mobilize that stuff. And from what I've gathered, it's going to, I think, be a little tougher to swallow as we watch more episodes. It's I think it's really engaging, and like obviously Kate Blanchett of all people being on TV. Like, come on, man,
Right?
she's so good.
Yeah, she's fantastic, but the cast is stacked. I mean, um, you have Rose Byrne playing Gloria Steinem, and
Mhm.
she's probably like second billing in this, but even the bit players, like you have Margot Martindale,
Mhm.
who's just a fantastic character actor. You have John Slattery playing Mars, that skeezy senator. Yeah, it's I mean, there's this person after person that throughout the cast, and the acting is top notch, the storytelling is great, and yeah, Blanchett, every time she's on screen, uh you're just mesmerized by her. And I think what I really love about the storytelling is it sets her up in the first like episode or two to be like this really smart figure who like almost feels like impenetrable in some senses. Like every time a challenge comes at her, you see her like parrying it away or logicking her way around it, or just like being the smartest person in the room. And then as she's kind of like moving up the ladder in terms of her foes, her political foes in this sense, you start to kind of see that fall apart, and how there's really like these kind of cracks in her logic, and just kind of her thirst for hunger kind of sets her up to look like a fool at times, and to lose a lot of serious or a lot of her actual relationships, like especially with Sarah Paulson and
Mhm.
the other friend there that I don't recall the actress's name, but I think it really, like the way it sets her up in the first 2 episodes, and then the third episode starts to really move that in a different direction. I was really intrigued by not only the political side of things, but also Mrs. Schlafly's personal life as well is pulling me in.
Right. Yeah, and I think like if you're watching this and maybe like didn't know the history, didn't look anything up, you'd see in the beginning how it sets up Phyllis to like she's kind of noticing the obvious biases against women of the time culturally and the sentiments of men and within government and all that stuff, right? And you think, oh, maybe this will push her more to the left, more to the progressive side. But no, she's actually going to completely double down and only get even
Hmm.
more invested in this, and I think ultimately going to feel satisfied. Like she died a few years ago, but like the last book she published was like the case for Trump. So it's like she was very happy with how she went about this. It's just kind of funny the way it presents it. Where you're like, really, that's what you decided? You're like, gonna double down on all the understated sexism of the time? Okay, yeah,
Hmm.
good
Yeah.
stuff.
Definitely good stuff. Looking forward to it. I think it's only 8 episodes, so I think they're going to be releasing one a week from now on. So we'll probably be finishing up late May if my math is
Yep.
right. But really looking forward to the rest of it. Also, just love the style. It is kind of shot a little bit like grainier, almost like sepia tone in some
Mm-hmm.
cases. So it kind of gives it that like 70s feel a bit. Um, but yeah, looking forward to finishing this one up. Also, was looking forward to starting season 2 of What Happens in the Shadows, What We Do in the Shadows. I'm sorry. So I was looking forward to starting season 2 of What We Do in the Shadows. Jermaine Clements show for FX based off of the Taika Waititi short film from early 2000s or 2010s. And um, season 1 we reviewed, and I think you were a little higher than I was on it. The humor didn't always hit for me the same way it did for most people. It got really good reviews after season 1, but the first two episodes of season 2, I thought were fantastic. And I think the two things I liked the most were focusing on Guillermo, how he's like protecting them from like the vampires, but he can't like tell them about it, and like that
Right.
conflict really I think adds to the vampires and Guillermo's like relationship being so like opposite of what where Guillermo wants it to be, but perfect for where the rest of the vampires want it to be. But also, I thought the second episode where they have like their spirits kind of come out and like they have to like settle them, so to
Yeah.
speak. That was such a smart way to like I mean, I thought it was hilarious, like a lot of it, but it's such a smart way to like also build those characters out a little bit and to like understand them a little bit more. Just to really seemed to, I just thought that was brilliant. So I'm a lot more in on this season so far than I was season 1. How are you feeling about season 2?
Yeah, I like these two episodes as well. So funny, dude. Like, did you satisfy your ghost? Yes, yes, I did. And like the whole thing, the way they set that up too, it's
Yeah.
like they're like, ghosts? No, I don't believe in ghosts. That's preposterous. These fucking vampires that fly around turn the bats, but they don't believe in ghosts. That's where they draw the line. Like it was such a
Right.
really funny
So good.
construct. And then Haley Joel Osment guest starring in the first one as a Topher who
Yes.
becomes a
Hmm.
zombie. And like whether it's like the high five bit that they bring back when he's a zombie, like I thought that was awesome. And then
Yep.
Benedict Wong being this like necromancer who's really just this grifter peddling shit. Like uh, I thought it was
Hmm.
just really funny. And I agree with what you're saying. Like sometimes the humor doesn't land as well. I think there's a lot of jokes in it, so they just kind of throw them out to you. And I think when they do land, though, it's like really good laughs. Like once Osment became a zombie in the first episode, I was just laughing for the rest of the runtime. So
Yeah.
like, it's like when it hits, it like really hits. And I mean, they had a lot of good guest spots last season, particularly in the trial episode and with Nick Kroll, and I mean, two big ones in this first episode. So I'm looking forward to seeing more of that, and the fourth wall being broken constantly per the mockumentary presentation of it all. And yeah, and we haven't even gotten a whole lot of Colin Robinson yet, and he's just like always funny. So yeah, shit's good.
Yeah. No, it's really good, and I'm looking forward to being a little bit more into it this season. I think, uh, I think also the way I watched last season, I binged it a lot. I'm gonna try to keep up with it week to week, because I think that might keep me a little bit more engaged and a little bit more into the jokes. But yeah, the writing on this show is very smart, and Jermaine Clement wasn't part of the writing or directing any of these, but he is in the last couple episodes. There's only 7 this season, I believe. and I'm looking forward to his touch because I know the overall conflict too of like the vampire, was it like league or like tenant being after them, is
Right.
really an interesting like overarching plot in all of this.
Yeah, it's
Um,
I think it's a fun bit of escapism, especially at this time, because
yeah,
it's set in our
yeah,
real world, but still like set in Staten Island's where they live, but like it's yeah, it's fun. So I'm similar to you too. I'm looking forward to keeping up with it week to week as opposed to binging it all at the end. So
yeah.
yeah, with it,
Um,
FX doing well.
Yep, and they had another hit, in my opinion, with Devs, or should I say Deus,
Dun
the
dun dun.
Alex, the Alex Garland is mini series that just wrapped up. We reviewed the first episode or two, I think, of it, and I think so. Yeah, the first two, and I think we what we enjoyed most was the style and a very intriguing story. This tech genius creating this computer um, that can almost like see into the past and also apparently the future, which we didn't know at that time, and uh, almost is like this godlike machine that this Russian agent tried to steal, killed, and then Lily is thrown into trying to kind of sort everything out. Um, I thought this series was really good, but something just felt, I think, a little bit off for me. Like it's probably like an 8 or 9 out of 10 for me, but there was just something that felt like it didn't totally stick the landing that kind of left me being like, huh. But I will say, after self thinking about it for like 2 or 3 days, and I still am trying to like grapple with what exactly I take away from it in terms of what it means about determinism versus free will, and
Right.
that's really what's at the center of this. So Dave, with me kind of giving this preamble, how are you feeling about Devs as a whole? 9 of 10, 10 of 10. Where are you rating it?
Yeah, I agree that it's like it's not it doesn't fully land. It's a lot. It's quite similar to I think Annihilation, his second directorial
Hmm.
debut from Garland, where it's a bit of a more polarizing reception. It really just depends on if it connects with the audience because there's I think things that Garland consistently always does well, right? It's casting, set design, directing choices. You think of stuff like the Amaya statue or the Devs complex. Just really stark visuals that always stand out. The halos in the forest, right? In episode 7, when Kenton's dead, like his eye looking out through
Mm-hmm.
like the blanket, stuff like there's obvious touches, right? Um, but like thematically, all those themes are awesome, and you're still thinking about them. But it's like, does the story ultimately like deliver on what you want? And I think there are weak points to it. I still really like it. I'm still really happy with it. But like I think there's weak points to it because I think some of the dialogue was a little stilted at times, and it didn't really help Lily. Like Lily is our lead character, but Lily ultimately does not become that interesting. A lot of times she's like saying things like, "What? How? Why?" Like she's just kind of like
Yeah.
always kind of speaking simply, and like when you have that episode where like they go to
And so
Forrest's
flat.
house and like she's just kind of being like, "That's what this means." Oh, like it doesn't really go anywhere, right? And like meanwhile, she's just kind of getting acted off the screen by Allison Pill, who's like low
Mm.
key like psychotic the whole time, but like in a really scary way because it's more about how Katie is really accepting of everything they're doing, and like
Yeah.
so I think everything with Katie and Forrest I really liked and almost wanted more of it because I think it really more spoke to the themes, whereas Lily I think kind of was more up and down. And I mean uh, Jamie died as he lived, right? He's a total simp, right? We can say that.
Yeah, Jamie, tough look for my guy. I appreciate him being a supportive friend and partner, but man, really just kind of got worked throughout this whole thing is a good one because I think Sonia Mizuno, who played Lily, definitely could have used a little bit more seasoning because like even in the episode where they go to Forest house and she's sitting across from uh, Allison Pill playing Katie, rather than like Lily being like, "This is what I'm telling you," or "This is what I'm gonna do." She's so flat the whole time. I almost wonder if that was like an acting choice or a directing choice because I know Garland in a way I felt like wanted there to be like a roboticness to some of the dialogue and some of the interactions. It's just this overall like idea that like what's gonna happen is almost like we're robots that are on this like path that we can't see, and Lily even like speaks that directly in the final episode. But man, I really thought Alison Pill and Nick Offerman when they were together were just fantastic, and it's the little things, right? It's like that final scene where you see Nick Offerman show Lily what she's going to do, and he looks over and you can see like the tears welling up in his eyes because he's like afraid but also accepting that like this has to happen so that the ultimate goal will be achieved. And just the way he like slightly breaks, I thought was fantastic. The way Allison Pill goes from being like so calm and collected to like losing her shit to like, let's just do it then, just like put like it's that final episode is such like an encapsulation I think of everything that's like really good and really not great about or maybe where it missed. I wouldn't say not great, but where the show missed a little bit. Anyways, a couple of things I wanted to go over. How did you feel about Zack Grenier, who played Canton in this?
Very Mike Ehrmantraut-esque, just fucking murdering people, dude. I thought he was really menacing, and it was kind of weird realizing that he just became really like disassociated from Forrest and the rest of Amaya, and he was just kind of like on his own bent of like tying up loose ends. And it's like overall, like I think the strict plot of the show kind of flattened out by the end, and Kenton's role in it it's like, all right, well, now Ken's just gonna die, like that's all. But I liked it. I liked his presence. I thought he was really scary.
Yeah, I thought he was good, but it also at times I was like, I don't know if it worked for me completely, him being so like, I don't know, like Terminator-esque. Like my dude like battled with this Russian agent and had like a knockdown, drag him out fight where they both were like really messed up, and the next day goes and like is driving Lily to the psych hospital where she crashes him into like a head-on collision where he's knocked out, and then just a couple hours later it was like at the house like torturing Jamie. He really was like Terminator like, and meanwhile he's like 5'8", 180-pound old man. I'm like, damn, I don't know. Didn't always feel believable, but still really fun to watch. I also I wanted to check in and see how you felt about Lyndon and Stewart, who were like the two main like side engineers at Devs who had a pretty significant role in the series. How did you feel about their two performances?
I think for Stewart, Stephen McKinley Henderson's just such a welcome presence whenever he shows up at anything. That's just awesome seeing him. He's so good. And Lyndon, I think Lyndon has like those two really good moments, obviously, where he has the falling out with Forrest, where he's like, no, my shit works. You're asking for the impossible in terms of like the realizing the multiverse versus the one specific universe that Forrest is seeking. And when you see Jesus on the cross speaking Aramaic, like, that's a really wild moment. And then I think Lyndon, of course, at the end when Lyndon dies at the dam after talking to Katie, that one again, I thought was really kind of hits the themes home in an effective way. And he's also sticking his arms out like he's on the cross. Look at that. But yeah, in terms of like Stewart actually being the one to like make sure the quote unquote future happens the way it's supposed to, that one kind of threw me for a loop because I didn't realize he was as like lost in the sauce the way Katie and Forrest were. Yeah. But I like both of them.
Yeah, I thought they both were good. I didn't realize Lyndon was played by a female. Um, Kaylee Spivey played Lyndon and has been in a couple of things, which kind of threw me for a loop a bit. But I thought they both were really fascinating, and I thought Lyndon, especially like that scene you mentioned where you hear Jesus speaking Aramaic on the cross, is fucking an amazing scene, but also then really highlights the obsession that has, and unclear when he basically like have Lyndon killed in front of everybody. It's like this is what's going to happen if you tell anybody about this. It's like, oh shit, like this guy really is just like a crazy psychopath. But then I didn't leave the series feeling like that's like the clear villain. Like I felt like all the characters, maybe beside Katie, who is just kind of like this crazy genius. But you're kind of given some sweetness when her and Forrest connect. But Forrest, who really is like the main villain, quote unquote, I felt like I could empathize with his motivations and like his just this is a desire to try to have back this thing that was so important to him that he lost. Obviously, doing it in like a very unethical way, but I thought Garland did a good job of telling the story in that sense. Um, so now, why don't we like transition a bit to how are you feeling about Alex Garland's works in total now? Because well, we have Ex Machina, we have Annihilation, now we have Devs slash Deus, however you want to go about it. And this is almost obviously now you think about Ex Machina and Deus together as this kind of
Right.
two pieces of a whole, or at least connected in some sense. And I wonder if Annihilation even is somehow connected as well. Do you dig what Garland is doing in terms of building this like shared universe across his films?
Uh, oh yeah. I mean, I think the reason Garland's so appealing is because thematically he just challenges the viewer, and even in moments where something doesn't totally land or work, like with Devs, I think everyone's still pretty charitable to the overall output because of how stimulating it still is, you know? Like Devs, I think what I really liked about Devs on the surface was that we weren't spending half the season being like, what is Devs? What are they working on? You know, basically right away, because it's interested with more interesting questions, you know? Just doing basic mystery box stuff, it feels so beneath what Alex Garland's interested in when it comes to like science fiction themes. So
Mm-hmm.
yeah, I think he's really impressive. And, you know, whether he sticks with TV or goes back to movies, who's to say? You know, Annihilation, Paramount kind of um, sold him out on that in terms of not really promoting it and selling its international rights before release. So maybe he's more apt to stick with a place like FX where they'll just give him a lot of rope and let him do what he wants. Who knows? But yeah, I'm still very, very much
Mm-hmm.
pro Garland.
Yeah, he takes big swings and asks big questions that, like you said, even when it doesn't totally land, you're still left with very thought-provoking content, which I really welcome. And he doesn't necessarily, like you said, like you kind of mentioned, he doesn't present it in the way that a lot of people do. He kind of just like puts it out there and lets you make sense of it how you want to for yourself. A lot of very like open-ended things that you're allowed to interpret, which I appreciate. You know, don't treat me like I'm five, treat me like I'm however old I am.
Right.
And I also like that because Garland doesn't like focus on like the mystery box of it all. I didn't even find myself thinking about until the very end, like, oh, what does Dev stand for again? Like I found myself a lot more wrapped up in what was happening, like episode to episode, where the plot was going, what the questions were that were asked. And then when he does drop something like, oh yeah, the V is Roman, it's Deus, I was like, oh, like I totally forgot that was probably something I should be trying to figure out or should be like waiting for the reveal of, because I just kind of accepted this is the world and there's a lot of other interesting things going on. So it works on a lot of different levels. Stylistically, I think he's has a great eye and sets things up in such a beautiful manner that a lot of times I could have even overlooked the misses because it just looks so great. So I mean, on Alex Garland as a creator, man, I don't know really how you couldn't be at this point. Even though his stuff isn't perfect, it's still top notch.
Yeah, man. Hell yeah.
So we'll wrap up there for this week. What do we got next week? Extraction, right?
We'll
We gonna
see.
do that? We doing it?
Let's do it. Fuck it. Yeah, Bad Education, the film on HBO. By the time you're hearing this, The Plot Against America and Better Call Saul will have aired their finales, so we got plenty of digging with that. And 504 is dropping his debut album as well, which is called something like 800 BC before Corona, I believe is the name, something like that. So, sure, let's go. It's Spivey.
Okay. Let's do it. And I'm sure some other things will pop up, so we'll be talking about them as they come. But to catch all that, hit that subscribe on YouTube, follow on Twitter at NowstalgiaPod, and go to SoundCloud.com/NowstalgiaPod. As always, follow us anywhere you want to. Stay safe and healthy. We appreciate you. Peace out.